From Bravery Media, this is Thought Feeder. My name is Joel Goodman. With me, as always, is the vivacious John Steven Stansel, and we are super excited to have Brianne Fleming on the show today. Brianne, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I know I've interviewed John Steven on my podcast before, so I'm happy to return the favor and be a guest today. Thank you both for having me.
We're definitely excited to have you here. And for our guests that aren't familiar with you, which is a mistake on their part, but nonetheless, would you mind just give everybody a kind of brief introduction, who you are, what you do, et cetera, et cetera?
I teach branding and social media at the University of Florida. I've been doing that for about 5 years, and I also do some freelancing on the side, but I think the people on Twitter know me kind of as the pop culture girl, I guess you could say. I love to create content about the intersection between marketing and pop culture, and to use moments in pop culture to share those marketing lessons and kind of package that education in a different way, which I also try to do occasionally in my courses. I have a new course that I just developed this semester for UF called Social Media and Pop Culture, and it's all about being nimble and adapting to trends and memes and all those fun things. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Excellent. I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about just that, because that's kind of where my career is headed a little bit, and working with fandoms and fan cultures and things like that. And also thinking of how that can translate back to higher ed, and how higher ed can learn so much from pop culture and fandoms and learn some lessons there. So first, would you mind tell us, when did you realize that you could translate? Like, it's such a interesting position to be in, like where you can translate your love of pop culture as an effective tool to explain marketing concepts and strategies.
Yeah, I say I got there by kind of reflecting on who I was and the things that I love versus trying to reinvent myself. That was a mistake I made when I left the corporate world, and I doubled down on teaching, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to freelance. I'm going to try to build something for myself. And I hadn't done that yet. And I started off by just kind of trying to be like this buttoned up marketing professional and kind of blending in. And I was like, this isn't who I am offline. I grew up reading my teeny bopper magazines, and I always credit Tiger Beat and Teen Beat and all of those magazines for leading me down this creative path that I've been on, because I'd always kind of consume those a little bit differently than the other girls at the sleepovers. We would hang the posters on the walls, but I would really pore over those and look out the layouts and the ads, the photography, the copy, and just think, this is what I want to do. So I later went on and I studied advertising and PR, and I always knew I wanted to do something creative. So it was really just getting back to who I've always been, instead of kind of putting this facade on, which I did make that mistake when I first started freelancing, but I'm happy to be back to my true self.
Exactly. That's a wonderful point too, of like, I think also when I was first like having the forays into what the personal branding, which I roll my eyes at, but is still important. Like, I want a new name for it. But like, you start out with this kind of buttoned up, like, oh, I need to be professional, I need to be all of that. But like, or niche down, you see on TikTok, like find your niche and just stick to it. But like, you've got to show your personality and what you care about as well. And like, if you can incorporate that into your work, it's so helpful. So yeah, I applaud you for doing that. I love, if you're not, I don't get to pop into Pop Chat as often as I would like, but Fridays, Brianne hosts Pop Chat, which is absolutely amazing. I don't have a question. I'm just gushing about how awesome Brianne is. So one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately, with just in general, is working with fandoms and how marketers can learn from fandoms. And you being very much of the Backstreet boy band fandom, which is an area I know nothing about. What can marketers learn from those fandoms and in a way of like turning audiences that are passive into engaged fans?
Yeah. Well, I always credit, honestly, the Backstreet Boys for teaching me about brand loyalty. They were my first loves, I guess you could say. And at every sleepover growing up, it was always Backstreet Boys are NSYNC, and they created this competition. And a lot of people don't know, maybe you guys don't know this either, but that was actually kind of a man-made rivalry. So the man who helped put the Backstreet Boys together, his name is Lou Pearlman. He realized sooner or later there was going to be competition. Coke was going to have Pepsi. And he said to himself, why don't I create that competition myself? So he went around and actually created NSYNC and kind of stabbed Backstreet in the back a little bit, but it was kind of brilliant on his part. It turns out that he was a con man and he went to prison and he was cheating both bands out of millions of dollars, and he ended up dying in prison. So I don't know, maybe something there. Something about brand loyalty.
I'm having flashbacks to the O-Town TV series where he was like...
I am a proponent of like nobody is a perfect role model. Like one of my favorite books is this giant series about Lyndon Johnson, which LBJ was a wonderful president, terrible man. There's a lot of lessons we can learn from him, both good and bad. Like sometimes you need negative role models, right? But how smart it is to own both sides of that rivalry, but also understand like you need your villain too. Like you need, that competition. I think universities can learn a lot from that. Like I've always wanted like more rivalry of the next school. Like even though it's fun, like
yeah, it keeps that conversation going. But I think for both bands, I mean, if you're a brand and you have your competition, you're always thinking about what they're doing and trying to outdo them. I think what has helped both bands, I mean, as a Backstreet Girl, I'm a little biased. I mean, they're still out touring nearly 30 years later, and they've always just tried to stay the course. They never tried to really let the NSYNC thing get in their heads. And I think that's a good lesson for people and brands, is to not really compare yourself to the competition. Just always stay true to who you are, your differentiators, and double down on those. And that's what's going to make you shine and keep moving forward.
I mean, that predates, it predates the boy bands. I mean, you think back to like the Oasis and Blur rivalries during the height of Britpop. It's the exact same thing. And it was created not necessarily by the person that created those bands, because they actually came up a lot more organically, but it was created by the music media, by the news media that was covering these things, and turned into something that actually on the band side, like they didn't want that. They didn't want to deal with it. They just wanted to own their little corner. And it's a good lesson to pull out of history.
The media loves to pit people against each other. I think back to like the Britney versus Christina days, and just how, no pun intended, how toxic all of that was at the time, kind of pinning all the blonde bombshells against each other. And yeah, we're always going to have competition, but I think even with that group too, thinking about the Jessica Simpsons, the Mandy Moores. Mandy Moore's an actress now, super successful, and it's just like, they let the media kind of get in their heads then, but I think now all of them have kind of come into their own, and it's really nice to see.
We could easily make this like an all music episode, but
bring you into my
I'm
world.
in, let's do it.
I'm good with it.
I will say that our producer Carl and I road tripped out to Hyatt Webb this year, from Austin to Little Rock, and we definitely had a stint where we were just listening to 90s pop hits for a good like 3 hours on the road. So
can't fight it.
I didn't necessarily do that to prep for this show, but it's coming in handy because it's all fresh in my mind.
Let's dive into it a little bit more. One thing I spend a lot of time doing in my job now, which I can't talk most about because I'm under like 50 NDAs to get into specifics, but like diving into fandoms and learning from them, and then making data-driven decisions based upon what they say. So what can universities and other brands in general do, like to better listen to those fans and those conversations and communities, and then make actionable changes based upon that information?
Yeah, I think that is all about incorporating them and involving those fans. I think a lot of mistakes that people may make or brands may make is just constantly talking at your fans when you have these fervent audiences that are so vocal. They want to share. They have their own stories. They have ways to connect with each other and bond with other fans. And I think just fueling off that conversation and that passion. I mean, what more could you want? Compared to product-based or service-based businesses where it's hard to get them to a true fandom level. But universities, I mean, you have this amazing audience of ambassadors, people who automatically love you the moment they step on campus. So double down on that love and involve those audiences would be my advice.
For sure. I think that's an opportunity universities are really missing on. Like you get it on the athletic side because it feels more organic and natural. Like you have sports fans, but like I think academic departments can have fans and have a fandom if you just listen and give them what they want. And we talk about brands in general too. There's a whole section of fandom for like scented candles. They're called fandles.
Oh,
Are you familiar with that? Like,
no.
You were nodding your head. I was like, yeah, are you a fandle? Like, they have their own. So if there can be a community centered around scented candles, which I love all day long, I wouldn't say I'm a fandle, but like.
How many you got in your office right now, JS?
I keep one out, and then I've got a few like.
What are the scents? Are they like sports scented candles, or are they supposed to smell like your stadium, or like what?
No, they are like fans of like Yankee candles or Colonial Home or whatever. Like they are like really big on it. But if they can build a community around candles, you can do it for your university's comparative literature department. It can be done.
I mean, when you put it that way, I mean, it's so true. Like every university genuinely has fans already. Like not every company can say, yeah, we have a fan base, but it's true for universities. So that's a really special, something really special that they could tap into for sure.
Exactly. It's like with the university, it's not, well, for the most part, it's not an impulse buy, right? It's not, people aren't just like, okay, I guess I'll go there tomorrow and enroll and spend the next 4 years. They have active, and it may not be your first choice, may not be your second or third choice, but you took the time to apply, do all the work to get on campus. So you're going to be, you're kind of primed to want to be it, so you don't get buyer's remorse, right?
With fandom, though, like on a higher ed level, right? I think, when we're not talking about athletics, the difficulty, at least in my mind, is these roadblocks in how institutions tend to want to communicate with, like, as themselves, right? It's like, I think it goes back to the, the authenticity and kind of the, being really genuine with the fit that you have in your work, like you said earlier, Brianne. And so I'm wondering like how to balance that. So, and Brianne, you're in a unique position because you actually teach. And so you're kind of in a position that I think historically would be considered like one of those roadblocks to having like really good, authentic communication. And I'm wondering like how, like if you have tips for, one, I guess like other instructors, at the university level, but maybe even the folks in the marketing departments and, especially like the social media folks that are trying to like amplify this stuff, how to kind of work to make sure that the instructors, the professors, the department heads, whoever like wants to, put their voice on it isn't coming across as like super cringe. And can be authentic and in a way that actually does generate that fandom, because I think it's hard if your niche is just like, like JS having his master's in in creative writing and everything else is like, that's pretty niche. Like, I mean, you're not necessarily, it's not people that are, that are screaming and going to book signings and acting like you would for like, a boy band or a movie star or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about how to pull that humanity out of a traditionally non-human sounding little sector of the industry?
I gotcha. I mean, I think back to 5 years ago when I first started teaching, and I would probably cringe at the way I lectured and the way I delivered these concepts. And I think over the years, I've started to see it more as an opportunity to entertain. And I think that's a good reminder, is you're not just sharing concepts. You have to make them feel passionate about it, and you have to also make them interested. So your passion needs to be contagious. So I've started injecting more, just speaking from the heart a little bit more, and incorporating humor more and real life experiences, good and bad, just to bring that authenticity instead of being, this like strict professor type. And I think it's not only something the students appreciate, but even me as a professor, like it breaks the ice. And I think if more educators, more higher ed professionals just stopped, building it up in their heads that talking to students is so hard, it's a different generation or whatever it is, like just have fun with it and try to entertain it and be human, share, like I said, share the good and bad, break the ice, and it's always appreciated if you're just yourself. Unless you're boring, then you gotta step it up, tell a joke, learn some, take a improv class or something. But yeah, I see it more as entertaining these days, and it really helps.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to like for faculty, like sharing your passions. Like nobody gets a PhD in, I'm always I never want to pick on anybody. I'm trying to think of like the most boring thing to get a PhD in, but nobody does that unless they actually enjoy it and care about it, and then go on to teach it to others. So like you might go, okay, nobody cares about but you care about it, so share it in a way that shows that. And
that's something I take to heart, because when I get my instructor evaluations back every semester, I'm always holding my breath for like something bad. But a consistent theme that I take a lot of pride in is that they do like a little word cloud of like the most common words that students say. And every semester for my reviews, enthusiastic is the biggest word. And I take that with me because I hope that my enthusiasm is contagious and that it inspires them to be enthusiastic about this field and to share that with their teams and with other people. So if you're enthusiastic about it, I think it's going to come more naturally, and your students will feel that.
Well, it definitely comes across on your Twitter account. So I can only imagine it being like amplified times 10 in the classroom. I kind of want to take a little turn here, but because I want to address this a little bit on the Reinventing with Mindy podcast, you mentioned that you struggled early in your solo career with imposter syndrome. Now, I want to address this because like I want our listeners to understand that even those people that they see online who are doing cool things, putting themselves out there, also get imposter syndrome and have to deal with it. So would you address a little bit about that and what you've done to address your imposter syndrome in the past?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've just stopped comparing. Even to this day, I think I've gotten better with my imposter syndrome, and I've just kind of let things fly and, been okay with, okay, if this flops, fine, whatever. But I think no matter what stage you're at, we're always going to compare. So I try to just kind of, like I said earlier, just stay the course, be myself. That's the best I can do. The other thing that I always advise, or something that I've struggled with a lot, is I thought when building your personal brand that opportunities you're just going to be like a magnet and opportunities are going to flood your inbox. And I see people like this all the time, like, oh my gosh, I'm double booked, I'm booked and busy, or, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm speaking at this, I have this opportunity. And I think for me, I expected that. And I thought that's, if I just tweet a couple times a day, my inbox is going to be flooded. And that hasn't been the case. So I've stopped kind of waiting for people to ring my doorbell and call me up and invite me to things. And I've been more accepting of just pitching myself and going after things that I want. Instead of waiting for people to approach me, I'm going to just take matters into my own hands and be proactive and use my personal brand as evidence of what I can do when I do that pitch. So I've stopped kind of resting on my laurels. And I think that's something that fed my imposter syndrome. And I'm okay with being proactive and pitching myself if that's going to help me get to where I want to go. So I've been doing that more recently.
I think that's a great point. A lot of people miss I think in the age of like influence and celebrity and, having just like closer access than we've ever had to these things, in the last like 50 years, that's one of those things most people don't realize, that it actually is really hard work to build your own brand, your own following, your own momentum. And it's not, for most people, it's not this magic thing that like, yeah, you just start talking and people come and say, you got to be some people can do that, but it's really not that many, and it is a grind. And so I think it's a super good reminder, Brianne, that like when things don't just happen, it's actually probably not you. Like in most cases, it's not you. Or what it is that it's not you personally. It's just, it needs a little bit more work because there's the noise, there's there's everything else that we have to deal with today. It's really hard to find those opportunities.
But also with like personal branding, it's a constant learning process, right? Like, finding what works and finding your audience and tweeting and writing in a way that, or finding the platform that works for you. And it's a continuous thing. And then on top of that, like once you get to a point, we talked about this in a previous episode, like when I hit 10,000 followers on Twitter, like I had like a panic attack, like because it wasn't going the way, like I would tweet things and not everybody loved me all the time, all of a sudden. And there were people that were like, and it's like, okay, learning to deal with that and moving on. And so it's a continuous learning process. And then sometimes the imposter syndrome's a little healthy. Like from time to time, I have to pause and go, why does anybody care what and it's tough, but like you kind of need to do it from time to time too.
Yeah. I mean, you say that, it reminds me, there's something weird, like when you hit a certain follower count or when you get to a certain level of success, it's like people suddenly think that's permission to treat them poorly. And like you suddenly get to become a punching bag. Last night I was watching Dancing with the Stars because I love that show. But Charlie D'Amelio is on it. And she did this incredibly moving dance that kind of symbolized her journey with anxiety and how all of a sudden she was under this microscope with millions and millions of followers, and how she's experienced anxiety because of it, and how her comment section can be such a dark place. And it's like, some people are like, yeah, but she signed up for that, by making all these videos and building this audience. And like, that's not an excuse to be a bad human and she doesn't deserve that, So I don't know. It's a double-edged sword sometimes.
I think about this a lot. Like, just talking about what brands do on social, and like sometimes we see things that we're like, oh man, that's really off. But like, we know there's a person behind that, and it's a small community. But also, you sometimes like, I really want to comment on, and there's part of my brain that wants to pick it apart. So it's we have to remember that there are real people behind all of these things, not just personal brands, but brands themselves,
right?
And approach it in a way that we can make criticism, but in a way that is constructive. I don't know. It's hard to do.
In kind, it is hard.
Okay. Brianne, you do so many things. You teach at UF, you consult for brands, you host a podcast, a successful Twitter chat. Like every Friday I see that, and like I'm in the middle of like 50 million things. I'm like, how is Brianne having time to do this? Because I would love to pop in and like answer a few questions, but I'm like, I gotta do this. So
that's one of the rules. Pop in at any time. That's why it's called Pop Chat.
So what advice do you give to others who want to create more things, but feel like they are limited in their time and scope?
Yeah, I mean, I will start by just saying personally, that's what teaching has afforded me. I started teaching just one class while I was still working part-time. And then I got to a point where I wanted to go out on my own, try to create my own things. And I was like, oh my gosh, but I'm unemployed, I guess you can say. Like, I'm just teaching this one class. I don't have a corporate job. So I did kind of get into this panic mode, and I contacted UF. I was like, I need more classes, help me. Because it was that imposter syndrome started sinking in. I didn't know if I could do this, if I could freelance. I had no audience, nothing built. But for me, that's what the teaching has done, is because I do teach online, it kind of gives me that flexibility to teach in the evenings, teach on my specific days, and keep that going. But it gives me the time to kind of create and have these side projects and build the podcast. And, a lot of these projects aren't to where I want them to be yet, but I've been able to kind of balance those two. So I think as far as for other people trying to find the time, I think about this a lot within the context of social media professionals, and how the last thing they want to do is do social for themselves and build their personal brands. And what I always tell them is to frame your online presence as your outlet, not necessarily as a chore, as something else you have to do. Use it as a place to connect with other people, maybe even vent about your frustrations occasionally in a safe way that doesn't, come back to your employer, nothing too negative, but use it to connect with other people and help. And, we could help each other through it. So I think if you start seeing it as your outlet versus just one more thing that you have to do, you'll look forward to building your personal brand and it won't feel so time consuming and like a to-do.
Exactly. Like, not every day, most days. I look forward to like showing up on Twitter and and talking about what I do. Like, it's not a chore. It's something that like, I want to do. And it's kind of develops into a habit where it's like, I haven't put something out there today. Let's, good or bad, let's just do it, and it becomes something that you look forward to rather than like feel, I gotta get on there today. There are those days on Twitter though, but it's just because it's Twitter.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to keep going, because if it just feels more like work, then also it probably means you're not being authentic. Because when I was like, okay, today I want to write about the Spice Girls and what they could teach us about brand purpose, because I'm a geek and a fangirl and I can, and that's what I want to talk about today, versus, building it up into something that it doesn't need to be and isn't true to you. You have to stay true to you, and that's going to keep you going.
Right. And I think for me, like, I think one of the main reasons I started was, I didn't feel like I was in a position at work where I could do the things I felt you could do on social. There's so many approval layers, so many things you could do. And it's like, well, I've got my own account and I can just run that how I see fit and like try all of these things, see what happens, and, and do it that way. And that was an exciting outlet for me of like, okay, I can actually do these things that I want to do and I control it. I'm the end of the approval process. Like, that's great. If I say something stupid, it's totally my fault and no one else's. So it's not like I'm putting out a statement from the president that's going to get beaten up.
I've been feeling that even just on LinkedIn lately too. I'm just like, you know what? We could talk about the Backstreet Boys on LinkedIn. It's fine. If anyone could do it, it would be me. I'm gonna go there. So it makes it more fun.
LinkedIn needs that.
Yeah.
I've started posting on LinkedIn more, mostly because I got tired of other people copy and pasting mine and like not giving me credit for it, or getting plagiarized so many times there. I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to duplicate my Twitter on LinkedIn, whatever fits, But I think there's like kind of a bit of a LinkedIn renaissance happening right now, at least for marketers who are getting on there and finding community there, and also breaking the LinkedIn mold.
Here's my theory, JS. I think we all got so tired of just seeing I'm very excited to report this amazing life change that I'm going to have, or like the really like canned marketing self-help stuff where it's a fake story that obviously didn't happen to the person. And so like those of us that actually care or like grew up like in social media from the beginning when it was actually about authenticity and being social and like having community are just like, nah, screw that. And we jump in and are trying to be like actual humans on that platform where it feels like everyone there is just posturing all the time. So that's my theory. And we need more of it. Like we need more just personal interests. We need more, like geekdom that's not, typical like web geek type stuff, like your pop culture geekdom, Brianne. Like we need that stuff on LinkedIn because it brings a lot more humanity to a platform that has felt for the last 10 years to be not human at all. But that's my theory.
Yeah. I always try to bring it back and tell you why it's relevant and why it belongs there. It's not just like celebrity gossip and stuff, but that's a good theory. And I think my theory is that the pandemic had a little something to do with it. Just us being a lot more casual, letting our hair down. Everyone's working from home. Everyone's going through this together. And I think we saw that reflected on LinkedIn a little bit. It felt a little homier and less corporate, I guess you could say. I'm having fun over there.
Well, and too, I think there's been a lot of backlash against like those corporate posts too, where like, okay, well, if we're not doing that, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of at a loss. Like I'm trying to figure it out. And like, I don't want to just be copy and paste from Twitter, but like, I also don't want to be that like hard return guy that like, but that's what works there. So I'm like, if you see something that's cringe from me on LinkedIn, I'm just experimenting to see what works. Like, okay, here's okay.
Unfollowed.
Yeah. But that's another thing of like, where if you're just starting out with your personal brand, you have so much freedom because there aren't as many people looking at you and you have a freedom to make those mistakes. But once you hit a certain threshold of followers, it's like, okay.
Yeah. And I think what we need over there, I mean, as far as incorporating the humanity, is just more of sharing the story of how you got to where you are, more personal things, because those reflect in your career as well. Because I remember one of my favorite, maybe just most memorable posts when I think about LinkedIn is this former colleague of mine. I hadn't spoken to her in maybe 2 years, but I saw she showed up on LinkedIn and she shared her weight loss story. She had lost like 150 pounds and everyone was rooting for her. It was like as if she got, promoted to the C-suite. It was that same kind of, congratulations and just bonding, but it was a personal story that wasn't directly tied to work, but it was her well-being and, her overall health. And it was really great to see. And I just remember it was so refreshing to see that on LinkedIn. And I'd love to know more about kind of those personal journeys that people are going through on LinkedIn that speak volumes for who you are at work and what you're able to achieve. I think it'd be really great.
Exactly. So I think your personal things, those things like that, it translates. Like those lines between work and work-life balance and your personal life just get so blurred. We're working from home now, and my Twitter account I think is both personal and professional, and I think showing that on LinkedIn is helpful too. Like your interests help you with your work many times.
Yeah. Brianne, you want to play a game?
Oh boy, I'm usually bad at games, but
okay. Well, this one is tailor made for you.
It's super low stakes. Okay. We're calling this game "Finish the Lyric." All these lyrics are going to be from Backstreet Boys songs.
Okay.
And they'll range in difficulty from basic to mega fan. But like I said, it was low stakes, right?
Okay.
So that means like no matter what happens, we're going to send you a Thought Feeder coffee mug. And JS is going to handwrite you a note.
My imposter syndrome is at an all-time high right now because if I don't know this, I am definitely an imposter because this is like my entire.
Well, we can always edit it out. And like I said, you still get the coffee mug.
We'll blame it on me because like I will sorely admit that the Backstreet Boys hit their heyday when I was in the prime of my music snob days, which I'm not proud of. I'm very ashamed. So I never really listened to Backstreet Boys because I was too like high fidelity John Cusack character. But
I get it.
Well, no, that was BS. That shouldn't have happened, right? Enjoy different things. Like,
yeah.
So anyhow, that's if I could go back to my 20-year-old self, I would be like, dude, just lighten up and get that Justin Timberlake album. It's good. All right. So, but I haven't heard many of these songs, so my reading will be very flat.
Okay.
So bonus point if you can name the album it comes off of, or if you can't name the song, you could just name the song too.
Okay.
Like if you can't, yeah. So
I'm gonna have to sing.
All right, go Jazz.
Now I can see that we're falling apart.
I want it that way, from the way that it used to be. I mean, everyone knows that, but yeah, I want it that way.
I wouldn't know that.
I
just know the chorus. I know the chorus. That's it.
I can tell you that's Kevin's part. That's on I Want It That Way off the Millennium album. This is the song that they always show people like singing on the subway, or recently the Yankee game got rained out and everyone was just singing this to wait for the rain delay to be over. It's a very healing, unifying song.
All right. Number 2. I may run and hide when you're screaming my name. All right.
Mm-hmm. That's Larger Than Life. That's Brian's verse. That's the opening verse. It's off Millennium. That is one of the most expensive music videos of all time. If you're interested in that factoid.
Really?
Yeah.
How did it compare to Scream by Michael Jackson?
Good question. We'll have to get a fact check on that.
I remember that one being being so like
it's
such a big deal.
List. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious now. Now, like, and not to put you on the spot, but like, now I'm wondering. That was a cool video. All right. Yeah. Last one. And these are, Carl, do not use these for sound bites. Listen, baby, I'm sorry. I just want to tell you, don't worry.
Yeah, that's the call. That's off the Black and Blue album.
3 out of 3 for the win.
But JS, you do know that Justin Timberlake is in NSYNC, right? That was.
I don't think he didn't know that. He didn't know that.
correct you on that. So much to teach you. So much to teach you.
Yeah, I totally missed out on that fandom.
It's fine. It's fine.
I can name all the original members of Wilco if you're down with that.
Okay. We'll come back for that trivia. It's fine. It's fine.
What about Uncle Tupelo, JS? Oh. What about Uncle Tupelo?
Dude, I had a beer with Jeff Tweedy, so
I heard this story.
Yeah. All right.
Very jealous.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Oh, good homework.
I was going to give you some homework because, so this is just what I do. I guess I give everyone homework. But Lance Bass from NSYNC, one of the members of NSYNC, actually did an entire documentary about the the rivalry and the Ponzi scheme and Lou Pearlman and how he pitted them against each other and how he went to jail. There's a whole documentary about that. It's called The Boy Band Con. I think it's good family TV. If you are interested, it's just a good kind of juicy documentary to begin with, even if you're not into boy bands and maybe you like kind of the drama of that. So highly recommend.
That sounds right up my alley. Because as somebody who's only played D&D a couple of times, but I have read 3 different biographies of Gary Gygax, the creator of D&D. I don't do the thing, but I love all the research around the thing.
Okay,
so
I'm
all for that.
I made my parents watch it and they liked it. I made my husband watch it and he liked it. So I think it has that, that drama and juicy stuff that could appeal to anyone.
Amazing. Well, congratulations, Brianne. 3 out of 3. We're sending you a mug and a handwritten note from JS that you probably won't be able to read because apparently his handwriting's awful. So
horrible. Brianne, so great to have you on the show. It's good to talk to you again. We interact on Twitter quite often, but it's nice to actually be sort of face to face. So, but for those of us those listening who aren't familiar with your work, where can they find you? You're all over the place. So let people know where they can find you.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying to keep up with the consistency. That's the drawback of trying to be in so many places. But I'm on Twitter at Brianne2K, like Y2K, because I love that era. Pop Chat is a Twitter chat that discusses marketing lessons from pop culture trends. That's every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. I also have my own podcast called Making the Brand, which you could check out as well. But this was so fun. I have an episode with JS about superheroes and comics and all those geeky things. So that was a world that I didn't know too much about. So, it's educational all around, right? We're bringing each other into different fandoms and learning so much. So thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Thought Feeder podcast. And a very special thanks to Brianne Fleming for being with us today. Again, thank you, Brianne.
Thank you. I had a blast.
Again, you can find Brianne on Twitter at Brianne2K and check our website, thoughtfeederpod.com, for the transcript that will have also all of the links that she mentioned and probably some more. You can also find us on Twitter at ThoughtFeedPod. And we've got, and I already said, we have transcripts for everything on our website as well. Thought Feeder is produced and edited by Carl Grashit and hosted by John Steven Stansel and me, Joel Goodman. If you're a fan of the show and feeling generous, we'd really appreciate a review or a subscription to the show on your preferred podcast listening platform, especially Apple Music, because I'm pretty sure Apple Podcasts is the only place you can actually leave a review these days. But it does really help people find us, or share this episode with a friend who you think really needs to know about Brianne and what she's doing. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks.